My mother, F62, doesn't want to see me, F29, anymore. Me, F29, and my mother used to be very close as friends. Since getting married and having kids, I find I don't see her as much as I'd like. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, sees my mother very often nowadays. They get along very well. I notice that I feel more and more jealous of the bond between them. That used to be our relationship. My brother and I had children around the same time, several years ago. My mother babysits with them every week. Sometimes they also go do activities together in the weekend. My mother visits us about 5 times a year. When I invite her over, she has other plans or already made plans with them. It feels like she doesn't want to see me anymore, doesn't feel the need for it. She also denies that she goes there that often, but then when I randomly call her, half of the time she's there. She's free to do what she wants with her time, of course, but it stings. I don't even bother asking her for babysitting anymore, although we could use some help too. My daughter also often asks when she can see her grandmother again. I have already told her that I have a problem with the balance in who she spends time with between us children. She doesn't agree and denies this. My other sister lives furthermore away but doesn't care that much that they don't see her often. How can I best handle this situation so this doesn't escalate further? Unfortunately, you might just have to accept that your mother wants a closer relationship with your sister's family than yours. You've already addressed the disparity and she denied and brushed it off. There's not a lot more you can do. You can't force her to come over more. You can only try to get to a place where you make peace with it. I know this is a crappy solution that doesn't seem like a solution, but I've lived these weird lopsided dynamics and watched people work hard on what was fundamentally a one-sided relationship, or at best 80-20s. All of the angst only impacted the person doing the work. Once they just let it go and accepted that the relationship was what it was, the relief was overwhelming. My 33M partner, 33F, of 6 years told everyone that we were engaged. I just went along with it. Okay, the title is a slight exaggeration, and probably originally the result of a misunderstanding. My partner asked me if it was safe to assume that we would get married someday, and if so, could she describe us in those terms to her best friend. I figured, yeah, sure, it seemed like we were on that path, so it's not inaccurate. We had been living together for a couple years, and things seemed solid. Little did I know that I was apparently agreeing to a proposal. Immediately afterwards she went on a whirlwind tour of calling her family and friends to share the good news. She told her parents that we were engaged on speakerphone, and I just kind of stood there. It happened pretty fast. A week or so later, her mom came over to give her her grandmother's heirloom engagement ring. I've never felt quite like such a bystander in my own life. Now, she started wedding planning and issuing ultimatums about what she wants, and I don't even know if this is something that I want to do in the first place. But I feel like putting on the brakes at this point would mean the end of our relationship. Too long did not read. My partner apparently decided that we're engaged, and now everyone thinks we are, and I don't know what to do. Shit or get off the pot. It's been 6 years. If you don't want to marry her, and marriage seems to be what she wants, then leave her. Realistically ask yourself if you were ever going to ask her. 6 years. You know. If you don't want to marry her, fucking let her go find someone who does. She clearly wants marriage. How have you not talked about this in 6 years? Have another conversation about it. Ask if she's ready. Ask yourself if you are ready. Propose to her or leave. If this was the first conversation about marriage, that's an unusually assertive way to bring it up. Based on your ages and the length of your relationship, I'd be surprised if it's never come up before. This question may have been a make it or break it moment, and your answer said, let's make it. So, do you want to be married or do you want to break up? After 6 years, it's a fair question. My 26 female boyfriend 26 male could not make mashed potatoes. I normally do all the cooking, which I don't mind as he normally does the cleaning afterwards, so it's a fair trade emo. However, he decided to take a week off work. We recently had 2 weeks off at the same time over the Christmas period, and we are both introverts, but that time was spent with family, traveling to see them and put friends, so our social batteries are dead right now. So he took this week off to recover from it all and stay in to play Genshin Impact, League, Warframe and other games he enjoys. This does not bother me at all. I am still going to work and have come back home and cooked dinner. I told him today, just today, please make mashed potatoes to go with the beef stew. I had gotten up early to do all the prep for the stew and tossed it in the slow cooking so it was ready when I was home. I told him all he had to do was the mashed potatoes, that's all. I come home and he said, "I tried but it didn't work." Me. "How does mashed potato not work?" Him. "They were too hard to mash." Me. "How long did you boil them for?" Him. 10 millines. Then I added the milk and butter to mash it but it didn't work. I thought I'd wait for you to come home so you can figure it out. Me. "You boiled big potatoes for 10 minutes and thought it would work?" Storms out. I'm pissed because I DK if he's just being lazy or he's stupid. He is a scientist so I truly don't understand why he is like this, it really pisses me off. He is also high-functioning autistic but I DK if that can be used as an excuse. Our relationship is great but the lack of consideration when I've gone to work, had to commute for 2 hours to get home, and he can't be bothered to figure out mashed potatoes. Should I go on strike with making food? I DK what to do because I don't want to just forgive him. I want him to understand how annoyed I am. TLDR. Boyfriend messed up mashed potatoes and waited for me to come home from work to fix it even though he has an entire week off to play video games. Update. Thanks everyone for your comments. I was truly annoyed with him and gave him the silent treatment for a lil but realized that was toxic and I should be an adult and talk to him about it. I explained that I love our relationship and that he is awesome in many other aspects but I felt truly let down. It wasn't really about the mashed potatoes but more about the fact that I've had a hard week and he's been at home. I just wanted him to do this little thing right for me and his lack of initiative to Google or ask someone frustrated me. He said that he used a recipe but missed the part that he had to cut the potatoes. He apologized and said it wouldn't happen again. I know he has anxiety around cooking but it's still a life skill he has to learn because you never know what might happen. I felt like I was a bit harsh on my post about him. He does clean and takes initiative to plan dates and always sends cute messages whilst he is at work and is an all-round great person. He will do better, I'm sure, as will I, with how I choose to communicate with him. No more toxic silent treatment. It's not nice. Thanks again. This is weaponized incompetence. I'd stop cooking for the dude personally. What I'm reading is that he takes advantage of everything you do and doesn't have enough respect for you to help and carry his own weight. So why would you continue helping him and enabling his shitty behavior? He thinks the solution is having you do everything. That's a red flag. I am not a cook as well but freaking Google exists. He could have figured it out. He could have called a parent and asked them for advice. He made no effort. He's a man baby. Tell your boyfriend that the internet abounds with how-tos and recipes. At his age he should be competent to either cook simple dishes or find instructions. I'm sure you've heard the term, weaponized incompetence. F29. I'm taking a break from my boyfriend, 31 meters, after serious ongoing problems with his family. This is going to be a bit long so bear with me. I will condense as much as possible without losing important details. My boyfriend, 31 meters, and myself, 29F, are currently taking space from one another. He's at our home in TN and I am staying with my parents in PA with our 7-month-old son. We're scheduled to be this way for a month. We're about a week in and it's looming over me. In 3 weeks we're going to have the discussion about what we want to do. I don't know if I want to work this out or not. Here's more context. My boyfriend and I have been together for going on 2 years. For most of the relationship I have felt like his parents, more so his mom for most of it, have had problems with me and do underhanded things when my boyfriend isn't around or make nasty remarks that he doesn't hear. When I tell him about it and he talks to them, they tell him nothing is wrong and then he tells me nothing is wrong. A couple times he has even went as far to say that I just don't understand how family or social situations work because I didn't have a great childhood and I have autism. Nonetheless, he spent our whole relationship asking his mom particularly to make an effort and ask me for lunch or for us to go shop together. She always promises she will, then doesn't, and then he puts more pressure on me to try with her. So I did. Because I love him. I've asked her for lunch multiple times and tried to have us link up and she always either straight up says no or blows it off. He begged me to send his mom sonogram pictures of our baby and I felt like she didn't care so I agreed, but reluctantly so. She ended up drinking too much wine for the Super Bowl and announced to both of us and everyone else that was there that she thought it was super weird that I would send her those pictures and the baby looked weird. It's been off-handed stuff like that the whole relationship. When I was 7.5 months pregnant we went on vacation with his family to Las Vegas and I told my boyfriend I didn't want to go because I didn't think it would be a pregnancy or epilepsy-friendly vacation. So he told his parents he was not going, and his mom threw a fit saying most of the vacation was planned specifically to be for me. So after a fight about it we both went. And it was not. We walked about 20,000 steps a day, and that's the only time in my pregnancy I cried because my feet were so swollen they couldn't fit in my Crocs. His family spent most of our walking time rolling their eyes because I couldn't keep up, was winded, and had to stop a bunch to pee. One night his dad wanted to go to the Strip, which is essentially a bunch of bars. I told everyone I was going to the hotel room to soak my feet, and his dad flipped out and cussed me out, basically saying I was being a killjoy and they didn't pay for me to come on this vacation to sit in the hotel room sulking the whole time. It wasn't until me and my boyfriend had an argument about his dad speaking to me that way that he addressed it. His dad said it was wrong, promised to apologize, and never did. On Thanksgiving, my boyfriend and his family were up playing games until about 3 a.m., which wasn't a problem since we were up visiting family in PA and we live in TN. I expected them to visit well after me and my son went to bed. My issue was that our 5-month-old baby at the time was sleeping in their guest room 6 feet away from where they were carrying on, and they woke him up 3 times. So I politely asked if they could keep it down because it was 3 a.m. and I wanted him to stay sleeping. I went back in the room with our son, and my boyfriend's dad proceeded to lose his mind for the next 45 minutes, at 3 a.m. screaming and cussing the whole time, and woke the baby up about how I have zero appreciation and I'm so ungrateful, and basically went on and on about how horrible I was. My boyfriend came in after he was done sobbing, and I held him and let him cry and didn't say a word about his dad's behavior, but told him I wanted to leave in the morning. We had literally 5 other family members we could have stayed with, plus my boyfriend owns a house. Also, I have thanked his parents hundreds of times over the course of our relationship when they do literally anything, no matter how small, over texts, on calls, on Facebook, publicly, in person. Literally every way you can thank someone I have. And always ask if they need help with cooking, cleaning, etc. while we're there. I've actually been told I say thank you so much it's annoying. Also, we weren't there as a favor to us with all the other options we had for a place to stay. We were there as a favor to them because they wanted to see the baby. Anyhow, the next morning when we went to leave, he texted his mom to say bye to the baby, and she came in and started screaming at me and swearing at me and flipping out on me. Mind you, in front of our son. Which woke his dad up, and then he started again too. It quickly became a situation where we just started trying to pack up and get out as fast as possible. They were screaming that I'm horrible, I've ruined every vacation, I've ruined their lives, etc. etc. On my way out with one of our duffel bags, his mom blocked the doorway, grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me and screamed inches away from my face, "Sit your fucking ass down." I ran past her and she followed me in the dead of winter with no shoes, socks or anything outside, in nothing but a robe, and continued screaming at me that I'm a bitch and ripped her family apart, and I interrupted her son enjoying quiet time with his family, at 3 a.m. when they were all shouting, waking up the baby, and had been playing games already for 7 straight hours, and wouldn't stop. This all went on for a good 40 minutes before we were loaded up and able to get out. After all that, my boyfriend eventually yelled at them and told them that wasn't okay and they needed to make it right. They agreed and promised they would, and have still yet to show a sliver of remorse to me for any of it. His mom apologized for swearing because that was incorrect a few days later in an attempt to get me to allow my son to go back. I did not. And we came back up for Christmas, and I again would not allow my son to go there for Christmas Eve. That's when they celebrate Christmas. My boyfriend spent all day Christmas Eve hanging out with them and left me and our son to go be there with them for 13 hours. My boyfriend was so broken up on Christmas Day that our son wouldn't be seeing his grandparents for their first Christmas, and I decided to olive branch and allow them to come to my family's house where my whole family was, and I knew we would be safe for a bit on Christmas because I love my boyfriend and hated seeing him torn up. I also made it clear this didn't mean everything was resolved and it all needed properly handled still. They came and went in 20 minutes and acted like they couldn't get out fast enough. And a couple days later, my boyfriend went over there for 7 more hours without both of us again. Which I felt let them know he's fine with us being divided. The second time his dad went crazy on his for hours and cussed him out and told him again how horrible I am and that our son should be there and there's no reason he shouldn't be. He came back crying again and I consoled him again, and he begged me to do breakfast with him, our son and his mom. I very reluctantly agreed. She spent the entire breakfast refusing to speak to me and going out of her way to make sure I couldn't talk any time my boyfriend tried to loop me in the conversation while kissing all over our son. That is when I hit my point of I've had enough. After a long discussion my boyfriend and I agreed his parents are not in their right minds right now and as a family we needed space from them and they wouldn't be around our son. So he proceeded to keep talking to his mom like nothing happened and trying to call his dad after he disowned him. And his mom texted him asking if she could come and have a grandma-grandson day after that conversation and he went behind my back and agreed to it. That was my breaking point. I freaked out and said I don't want to be in this relationship anymore and I am tired of his family and tired of him continuing to side with them and let them know he's fine with them dividing us. He still hasn't addressed his mom putting her hands on me. He has repeatedly under-addressed all of it. He told me I wasn't allowed to press charges on his mom. And him going behind my back and okaying her to have alone time with our son after we discussed all of us not being around them right now was my breaking point. Because of how hard it is to break up 11 hours away from home with no supports down there while we're living together with a child, we decided to take a month-long break. We both thought that was to make sure we aren't making a mistake making such a permanent decision too quickly. So now I am a week into the break back in PA with our son and sometimes my boyfriend will video chat the baby and I get out of the camera. Outside of his family stuff we have a mostly good relationship. We do excellent with communication usually. We don't have problems with cheating or suspected cheating. We don't have abuse. We don't have money problems or drug use problems. There are so many major problems that don't exist in this relationship. And we have a lot of love between us. We moved 11 hours away with a 2-week-old baby which everyone promised was a recipe for disaster but honestly it was a very easy transition for us. We laugh a lot. We travel really well together. We can overcome situations that would be very hard for most people with ease. We don't really fight much. And I know something like that is significant other hard to find these days. But it seems like with his parents he loses his common sense and his moral compass and seems to repeatedly choose them over us and not address their wrongdoings. He's still in denial even after it happened right in front of him and my suspicions that they didn't like me the whole relationship were beyond valid. He just keeps trying to almost pretend this never happened and I can't and won't do that. I also will not ever be okay with my son being around them again at this point. I believe they are extremely unstable and will not be able to provide the kind of environment that my boyfriend and I have discussed making sure he is around. And now that we're on this break, his dad forgive him, yes. Forgave my boyfriend for his own very over-the-top multiple-hour freakout where he disowned him, so they're all good again. This was so long and I don't even know if anyone is still reading but at bare minimum it felt good to talk about this to someone other than family members who are either trying to ruin the relationship or are telling me to stay because they believe a woman should always stay with her man no matter what or like my boyfriend too much to suggest leaving him if that's the right thing to do. I feel like everyone I talk to is too biased and too close to the situation to advise properly. I love my boyfriend so much and that's why I stayed after all this. We've talked extensively about marriage. We have talked about having more kids and a big happy family that travels the world. We both agreed to couples therapy right before this last big blowout that warranted the break because it's taken a huge hit on our relationship. I'm a month into the break and I have no idea what he's going to want to do but I'm not really sure what I want to do either. I don't know if I want us to all live together and stay together and try to work it out after all of this or if he's just too attached to his family no matter what they do and if we stay together it's just a ticking time bomb that will eventually explode. I really don't know if it's worth saving or not. I honestly hate his family and I never want to see them again. It has ripped me apart being away from my boyfriend but not having to hear about his family or deal with them even indirectly has been amazing for my mental health. And I ultimately just want to do what's going to give my son his best shot and his most healthy possible outcome. He's my priority. So, what advice do you have? Reddit? The solution is easy. Move away from his parents. Out of sight, out of mind. Gives him time to mature and focus on his own wife and baby versus his parents. Don't have any more kids until you see a complete 180 degrees in his maturity. He's not attached to his family. They're abusive to him and as a result he's been conditioned to believe that he has to take it and that this is what normal looks like. He doesn't understand that this isn't what loving people would ever say or do to him, or you. When they give him a crumb of affection he grabs on so hard that forgives and literally forgets everything. Until he recognizes that he's being abused and always has been, he won't change.